II. Well, we have one more call-in segment that you can participate in, and we're pleased to introduce you to Lee Walker. He is the author of this book, Rediscovering Black Conservatism. He's also a senior fellow at the Heartland Institute. Mr. Walker, thank you for joining us here in Chicago on Book TV.
Thank you for asking me.
If you would, give us your definition of black conservatism.
Well, black conservatism at its lowest level is probably what your mother and grandmother told you about principles and practices. It's nothing to do with politics, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And therein lies the problem for discussing that word currently. Currently, it has a Republican face. But in the wider community, conservatism is a political situation. In the black community, going back to the 1880s, conservative meant middle class with a religious background.
Now, you say it has a Republican face and that's a problem.
Currently.
Right, but why is that a problem?
Because many blacks don't know their own history. You see, Professor Neil Irvin Painter at Brown took the challenge on. Her latest book, I think, Creating Americans 1619 to the Present, she has 3 or 4 paragraphs saying there has always been conservatives among blacks, such as Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington wasn't the father of black conservatism, but he was the most prominent and the most successful.
You write in Rediscovering Black Conservatism that most black conservatives do not vote Republican.
True. Well, you see, a lot of my colleagues who are calling themselves conservatives are really talking about the Republican Party. You hear them saying limited government and stuff. But the reason I call it is that we had it before. But it was part of the black middle class. Now, the photograph that you're showing does not exist. I put that together to show 3 generations of conservative leaders. The lady is Zora Neale Hurston. The man in his center is, of course, Booker T. Washington. And the man next to him is George Schuyler, a great columnist.
And who is George Schuyler?
George Schuyler wrote a book called, his autobiography is called Black Conservative. He argued that the true conservatives in America are black folks because we had been resourceful, patient, restrained, and all of that was true because that's the way it is, or it was at the time. And that was all wrapped around principles. Nothing to do with politics at all.
Well, some people might take issue with the fact that you call Eldridge Cleaver in later life a conservative, a black conservative.
I did.
Louis Farrakhan.
I did.
And Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes. Why are you calling them conservatives and not necessarily political conservatives?
For the simple reason, blacks were not into politics. Hell, you couldn't vote. How you get into politics? You know.
So in what way were they conservative?
Well, again, conservative in the black community meant middle class and a religious individual. So you're really talking about your black middle class. And the first black middle class began in the 1880s.
202 is the area code for all of our numbers if you want to talk with Lee Walker, author of Rediscovering Black Conservatism. If you live in the East and Central time zones, 585-3885. For those of you in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, 585-3886. We are live from Chicago, the Printers Row Lit Fest. You write that throughout this nation's history, some of the greatest agents of change in black America have been conservative.
Yes.
Please expand on that.
Including Martin Luther King. Well, you got to remember, I could have called it Southern black history. The majority of blacks have always lived in the South, including today. And that was just a way of life. As I think back to those early days, my own early days in high school, junior high school, there was no division really between lower class blacks and middle class blacks. Lower class blacks looked up to middle class blacks. They wanted to be just like them. The best example is how much respect blacks had for education and black teachers. Any teacher walking down any street in the South could say anything to any black student, and it was like their mother had spoken to them. So that was high respect for black teachers, I would say black ministers, black funeral directors. That was the middle class. And of course, a number of blacks were making a lot of money. I mean, segregation was good for entrepreneurs because, number one, white funeral homes didn't bury blacks. White barbers didn't cut black hair. Okay? So blacks controlled the taxi industry, going through. So, and what I'm really trying to do is remind blacks of the values we once had that we don't have today.
Are you trying to get black conservatives to vote Republican?
No, it has nothing to do with it. But let me tell you, today, Southern whites and Southern blacks call themselves blue dog Democrats. Blue dogs mean conservative. Even Nancy Pelosi said, "Oh, gee, it's nice working with them."
Lee Walker, you grew up in segregated Alabama. What was your childhood like? And what were the 1950s in Alabama like?
I saw the Ku Klux Klan. I was fortunate enough that I was never beat up by any white mob or anything. That did happen, but from my view, the importance of a black depended on the importance of the whites you knew. So, I mean, for instance, if I was working for you and the police came by, they said, "Oh, that's Peter's guy, leave him alone." It was that kind of a thing.
What are your views on affirmative action?
I disagree with it. Affirmative action began with great meaning. Then it turned into a negative phrase, meaning blacks are not qualified. And that bag is still there right now. It's another yoke. Never should have happened. I think that was part of the public policies that a few civil rights leaders created with what I say with Brown versus the Board of Education. Because after Brown, anything black was no good. See, I don't understand why a black child has to be in a classroom with a white to be educated. No one is concerned about a white child that doesn't have blacks in the classroom.
Who were your parents? What did they do?
My father was a laborer. My mother and grandmother, they were cooks. That was the jobs, basically, of blacks in the South, during the Jim Crow days. What did I do to make a few dollars? I was a caddy. That's where I learned the game of golf. I didn't know it was a middle-class sport as folks talk about it now. It was just something that Southern boys knew and knew it very well. Another custom about what happened to us, white golfers, all of the black golfers, we had a special corner that we would stand on, and the white golfers would come by and pick up a caddy. Bad white golfers didn't dare pick up a good black caddy. There was a rule. If you were not a good golfer, do not get Lee Walker. He belongs to us. Now, it wasn't written anywhere, but that was just the custom. We did this every Wednesday, because every Wednesday, middle-class white America on the male side shut down, and they went to the golf course. And if you were a smart student, the black principal would look the other way while we slipped out of school to go and caddy. And why did he do that, in my view? Because the next day you're going to have to buy a box of candy for the teacher.
Where did you go to college, and what was your corporate career?
Fordham University,